The board met in closed session under exception C1, which is specific personnel. I would like us to now, if I can have a roll call.
Mr. Riddle?
Present.
Ms. Callahan-Wozniak?
Here.
Mr. McBride?
Present.
Ms. Gonzalez?
Here.
Ms. Hannah? Here. Ms. Leguizamo?
Present.
President Dewey?
Here. So we do have a quorum. I'd like a motion to go back into open session.
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Riddle, all in favor.
Second.
Second by Ms. Wozniak. All in favor signify with aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay. We are now back in open session. And just because I see her right in front of me, is that Ms. Bittner, if you'd be so kind as to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, so first up is item 7A, which is the opportunity for public comment. All right, so as I call your name, please. Yeah, if I call your name, please come to the microphone. Do you have somebody doing sanitation on our schedule tonight? Not, no worries. There will be a clock displayed on each of the screens. You are allowed 3 minutes. If you need translation services will be provided to you, and you will get an additional 3 minutes for a total of 6 minutes to allow for translation. We do ask that you refrain from using student or staff names in your remarks.
Did you sign up already for the blanks? You signed in already?
I got you. You need a pen. All right, first name on the list is Wayne Cook. And I had a few people who wanted to sign up, so once they sit down, Mr. Cook. All right, Mr. Cook, you have 3 minutes and your time will begin when you start talking.
All right, my name is Mr. Cook and I'm a employee of the Waukegan Public District. Just a brief summary about what I've been doing. Serving our students and collaborating with our staff, I have made a significant contribution to children and families in the areas of academic instruction, mentoring, athletic program, leadership, and behavior support specifically focused on young men in our buildings. I am a community member who has made the conscious decision to give back to the Waukegan community by serving the children. I am also a student mentor, athletic coach, and dedicated on-site tutor. Each of my days serving at the Waukegan Public Schools is filled with subbing in a classroom and offering the critical supervision of our students' need. What I want to do, I am hopeful that not only will Waukegan Public Schools view my contribution as valuable, but will also remedy this issue concerning my compensation by doing so. So I've been in the district for 20 years, and I've been a long-term sub, and this year was the only year that I wasn't paid for that long-term sub, and it was under SBB subs, full year petition through the SBB process, but that was currently suspended for this year. So I was assumed that was going to continue. So what I wanted to do is I wanted to hope that my compensation by doing the following: restore compensation to the long-term substitute teacher rate dating back to the date of the decrease. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cook. Next name on the list, while they come and sanitize, is Mr. Ray Vukovic.
right, good evening. We've heard these phrases over the last 6 years from the superintendent. We need to do a deep dive. We need to right size. We need a do-over. Did she learn this while attending the now defunct Soups Academy while she worked at CPS under Barbara Bird Bennett? The spotlight is right now on the high school. But let's remember that a few years ago, that this superintendent dismantled the house system that was working at the high school, something that's been talked about at numerous board meetings. She then picked all the administrators that are at the high school. Those are her team. The area superintendent oversees the high school. This superintendent named that person, promoted her to be the area superintendent. The deputy superintendent was brought here and hired and put in that position by this superintendent. Over the last 6 years, the high school administration, area superintendents, deputy superintendents have come and gone. The only thing that's constant is the superintendent. The superintendent is the problem. She did away with the houses and hired the principals. Now that this has proven to be a failure, she wants another chance to redo the high school. If we are going to make changes, let's begin at the very top, right here in this building. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Vukovic. Next name on the list is Renee Barnes. Whenever you're ready, Ms. Barnes, your time will start.
Okay. Good evening. My name is Renee Barnes. I'm also a Waukegan district employee, going on 17 years. This is my daughter. She goes to the Waukegan High School, along with these two other gentlemen sitting back there with us. There was an incident at the Waukegan High School that my daughter, fortunately, was not involved in. And I got a phone call from my daughter stating that she needed to be picked up because she was unsafe. So I went to the high school and I inquired, why wasn't she safe? And they said because it was a fight and they didn't know if she was in it or not. And so they sent her home. And I said to them, how can you send somebody home if you don't know the problem? If she's not safe today, will she be safe tomorrow or the next 50 days that's left in school? Well, Mr. Briner took it upon him. Mr. Velch had her to write, they coerced her to write a statement stating that where she was at. And it was a lot of kids on the stairwell, and they picked my daughter out because she's had problems in the past. I'll give her that, but she's been turning herself around. So, you know, she's a past person, so they brought it forth and brought her to the forefront, so they sent her home. And so when I made the statement, why are you sending my daughter home? Then Mr. Briner said, well, she don't have to go. So I said, oh, if she doesn't go, then you're telling me that she's gonna be safe here? And he said, ma'am, that's your issue. But I also wanna say this. I'm also the parent, and I know nobody knows this. My son, he's now 11, when he was in kindergarten at Cook Magnet School, the police was called on him, okay? And they said they did not know where his mother was at. Well, my God, I work for the district. There was no way you couldn't call the principal, the assistant principal. I have a phone in the library, the secretaries and everything. But that was what was put in the paper. So I know this system is failed, it's jacked up, and I don't like it, and I want some action. And we can start with Mr. Briner and work our way down. And I don't care nothing about being no district employee because my kids come first.
Thank you, Ms. Barnes. And I do want to just remind speakers that we do ask that we refrain from mentioning student and staff names at the podium. But I do know not everybody comes to these meetings, and so I do just want to remind. Next name on the list is Rayon Edwards.
Is there any way we can get the error on in here?
Mr. Edwards, your time will start as soon as you start speaking. Yep. And I'm sorry,
evening,
can you guys
board.
restart this time? The clock was going. Whenever you're
Good
ready.
evening, board and community members. I had the opportunity, I didn't know what I was going to say up here today. Listening to this mother talk again today, it's disturbing. We keep hollering about take the principal, take the principal, take the principal. The principal got a boss, and his boss got a boss. And so I had the distinct pleasure of walking through the high schools last week. And after we walked through them with the board member, email gets sent out by the boss and said that a community, a board member and guest, not community members, not taxpaying citizens, but a board member guest, caused disruption in the high school. And that's disturbing to me because the same way I did it with the board member, I did it with the superintendent. We was unannounced. We walked through several classrooms, talked to several students and several staff members. So why was it a problem that I did it with the board member and not the superintendent? Again, I'm saying to this board here, y'all cannot be this blind to not understand when things are being strategically done. How we retaliate to staff members when they speak up or when they step out or when they push back. Staff are not kids. We want to talk about doing things right. Are we really doing things right? We have directors having personal relationships with subordinates. Is that professional? Is it right? Y'all hear it. If I'm at home and y'all down here in these buildings, I know y'all hear it too. Fights every day. Short staff every day. Classrooms sitting in cafeterias with no teachers. No work. They just on their phones. Cafeteria hot as hell. So I understand why the kids frustrated. But we got the biggest budget ever. And what are we spending it on? Have we looked at all the things the administration is doing and all the money that is spent on? Or is we not spending money and we spending gift cards because we see one of the assistant principals got caught up in that? She come from a lot of where our staff come from, the head. So if she was doing it, how could I not believe that it ain't been done by nobody else? And y'all didn't know? 15-year-old kid taken up out of the school one day. But the day before, did our district attorney know? The attorney that we hired. And when she found out, who did she tell? Come on, board. We elected y'all to speak for us. And unfortunately, y'all are failing at the task drastically. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Edwards. Next name on the list is Kashana Hanna. Ms. Hanna, whenever you're ready, your time will start.
So my name is Kershana Hanna. I am standing here in the presence as a community member and not because Anita is my mother. I also had the opportunity to walk through the high school last week. The email was very disturbing that the board member came with 2 guests when I signed in that I was a community member. It was disturbing because it said that we disrupted the students' learning educational time. But what it failed to say is the disruptions that happen every day. Fights. Students are scared to go to school. And the focus was on a board member walking through a school and not actually the problems. I spoke to students in the hallway. When I was there, we were able to de-escalate a fight when we came in. Nobody questioned the staff or disrupted anybody, so the email was totally untrue, saying that we were going in and out of classrooms. The building is full of cameras. Where was it? So when they say that people are lying here, and I give everybody the benefit of the doubt until there's no reason to, well, the superintendent blatantly lied. When they say that she's a liar, I stood on her side. I'm like, no, she's a nice lady. But no, the lies continue. She's a liar. And the board should know that. There's things that come out in the paper, there's things that come out and in these meetings that contradict what she says all the time, and she's still here. There are petitions going around to get the high school principal fired. Well, the petition should be for the superintendent to be fired. Like, you're addressing everything except for the problem. You're wondering why the students are upset. Have you ever talked to them? No. Have you ever gone to talk to them? Because I did. They don't feel safe. They said that they would like to have an open dialogue with the administrators that they never see. They couldn't even say the name of the superintendent, but she's concerned about the board member going to introduce herself. Teresa Placencia should be fired.
Next name on the list is Dwayne Springs. Mr. Springs, whenever you're ready, your time will start.
Thank you. I'm gonna jump right into it, try to get it within this 3 minutes. School board, you have a difficult job. Superintendent, you have a difficult job. I've been a part of Waukegan 45 years, and Waukegan has not just been great. So sometimes we tell a story that is absolutely untrue. We tell a story that it wasn't fights, that it wasn't disorder, and it's not true. There's absolute change going on in Waukegan, and all of it is not great. But there is a change that is necessary in Waukegan. That wasn't my topic. My topic is this. We went through a pandemic. The world went through. Since that time, what did we do to elevate our education? We went through a time where we didn't have teaching, where teaching was just online. What have we done to fix that when they came back to school? I was just watching the show on WGN. They were talking about adjustments that adults have to make when they return to the work environment, because the adults weren't able just to come back to the work environment and have standard practices, because they were in fear for 2 years, because of the anxiety, because of the depression. They said that the adults may have needed to have a staggered return back to work. Breakout rooms for adults, orientation, and maybe even make it more fun for adults to go to work, to get a paycheck. Okay. If that's the case, then what about Waukegan with all of our pre-existing conditions? With all of the flack that we have between our community and between our administrators and between our teachers and the teachers and the staff, and with all of our pre-existing conditions before 2020. How would it be appropriate for us to raise our graduation requirements to a pre-corona state? And we did nothing to elevate the education to a pre-corona state. I've had a child, my personal child, and now I've coached, mentored, trained literally thousands in the past 30 years. My son graduated Waukegan with a 4.5, and Yale came here to see him at 5:30 in the morning. I also had a child that graduated here with a C+, and we was happy to get up out of here. Woo, we got it. Boom, get you to college. I got one going through Corona right now, and I'm gonna get her done. But it ain't been easy.
Next name on the list is Calvin Mathis.
Good evening. Last meeting, we called for the resignation of the principal of Waukegan High School. Brother Blanks wrote a letter here, and it stated the reasons why students unjustly turned over to the police from school, police permitted into the school and pulled students out, traumatizing students and members of the student body and staff, mob action charges against students in 2018 after contact with the school. SRO, over 25 black and brown students received out of school suspensions in the first 2 weeks of 21-22 school year, sent home with no schoolwork, no phone call to parents, students are turned over to police, frequent fights, as we laid out in the letter here. And let me just say that, first of all, BAM, which I'm proud to be a member of, we're about solutions. We have to know and identify the problem first, which we lay out here in this letter for this one individual. Now, there's been some other accusations here, but that, I'm not discounting that, but for us, it's this individual whose leadership is obviously, he doesn't have it. He's failing as a leader, and leadership demands accountability. Even him as a leader should know, looking around him, that maybe he's not up for the task. And we're not here to hurt nobody. That's just not what I'm about, and that's not what BAM is about. But the students are what we should all be about. These are children. We all have made mistakes in our lives. We're not saying that everybody makes mistakes, but some mistakes hurt other people, and we have to be aware of that. When you have a leader in a position such as that, he has to take responsibility, and that's just the bottom line. And so, even I was sitting down in the lobby, and real quick, you got some things on the wall I really respect. You got responsibility, trustworthiness, respect, and citizenship. That's about leadership, accountability. If Mr. Browner was here and if he was listening, I would ask him himself to step up to the plate and be a good leader. Say, hey, I just didn't meet the mark, and nothing's wrong with that. I would respect that more than the kids getting hurt. The environment is bad. It's just bad. And so let's just start there as a solution, and that's pretty much all I have for this time. Thank you.
Brother Blanks.
I want to start out and reiterate what I said last time to any administrators or teachers. If you feel your job is threatened or that you're going to be retaliated against, feel free to contact us here at Black Abolition Movement for the Mind. But I would suggest that before you contact us, find the courage first to do what Ms. Lightfoot did, what Ms. Barnes did here, because that's how we can support you when you stand up here and you speak and know that your degree is first for our students and not for a paycheck. So make sure as we move forward to make some changes and get some changes in the human resource area over there, there's some attention that need to be there. So I'm just letting you know we will be focusing there. But as my colleague here say, there is some changes that we are demanding and that really has to be made at that high school as it pertains to Mr. Briner. Last but not least, let's talk about the fights. Let's talk about the fights. No, I'm not talking about the fights that we are accustomed to, what's going on in the schools. Let's talk about the fights. You know, when I filed my complaint with the U.S. Department of Education on behalf of the students, I filed that complaint in the best interest of black and brown students alike. But the fights that I'm seeing here, when I look at the fight, we have a black board president. We have a brown superintendent. But all the fights, the bickering, and the jockeying for positions and next position and how you're going to position yourself for the next position in the district or the next position in life, you all toxicity and lack of self-accountability is trickling down on our babies. How in the hell are you all fighting amongst each other supposed to stop the fights at the school? It's terrible, man. It is an embarrassment to our students and to every tax dollars that these people pay. the fighting that goes on between the black and brown administrators, the district, it sounds like you all need an intervention, some restorative justice. And in the area of solution, we had a historical meeting at Black Abolition Movement for the Mind. I'm opening that up. I'd like to sit down with this black and brown administration. You guys got to do better as black and brown leaders in here for our babies, because you're misrepresenting them. Stop that fighting at the top. Then you can hold some accountability on our students. Until you stop the fighting and bickering at the top, you can't even talk to about stopping the spikes at the school. You got to do better.
Final name on the list is Margaret Carrasco.
Yes, good evening. Two things. The first thing is that to inform the public, the taxpayers, and the parents, I submitted a FOIA request for a copy of the application, job application, and all the credentials of that administrator over at Whittier School that was involved with that situation in Chicago. The response from the district, which I have in writing, can't find the application. Wow. There's nothing. There's nothing. You know what? One time you got away with it. Second time ain't gonna fly. Okay? So I'm gonna fight it all the way to the end. So be it. The next thing is that, the reason why she's still here is our own fault, because we haven't taken the measures to get rid of her. I will have the petition to remove the superintendent for Waukegan Public Schools tonight, and I assure you, if they've done it in other districts, it's time to do it now. The only reason why she's here, so they say, is because she can't find a job anywhere else. No one's going to take her. No one wants her. Anyhow, this weekend there's a picture of a parent of several gang members supposedly outside of a house waiting for the child, they claimed. Both parent and son were afraid. They can't leave the house. Waukegan High School is a battleground for rival drug gang members. For the past year, I've taken a step back just to kind of see, hoping, praying things would get better. No, they've just escalated and just gotten worse. There's been so many incidents of students who have been shot, violence, every single day. The shocking fact only begins to show how dangerous things are in our gang-dominated high school and middle schools. Is impacting the learning. The kids can't learn because they're disrupted by so many fights. The whole entire school is controlled, the hallways, stuff like that, by rival gangs. Okay, turf. It's their turf, selling drugs inside of the school. It's supposed to be a drug-free zone, I thought. Okay, many students, maybe you don't know, have been found with large quantities of drugs. Okay. It's a war zone around there, okay? And people like us, we're just so close to each other. It just, I don't know, like, how can the staff, how can you teach when you have so much violence going on? And you can't, right, exactly. It's a public health crisis in the schools of Waukegan, in the high school especially, okay? It's a gang-soaked turf terrorism in our schools. So I'm here to say enough is enough. And I have filed a complaint today with Homeland Security, and they do agree it's terrorism. DEA, Illinois Department of Education, and Lake County Regional Office, because you know what? We want everyone investigating you, Placencia.
Thank you, Ms. Carrasco. And just for those who may be participating by phone, video, or if it's your first time in a meeting, public comment is the opportunity for the public to speak to the board. So the reason that we're not responding is not because we're apathetic, it's not because we don't care, it's because of the meeting. Again, that is your right as citizens to address the Board of Education at a public meeting. So thank you for your remarks. Next up is our consent agenda. The consent agenda is done in order to expedite the work of the board. Items are asked to be voted on, at one time. Any board member can request that any items be held over for any reason and voted on separately. And so I will open that up at this time. Are there any items that the Board of Education would like to be voted on separately? Please give me the letter.
Letter C.
Anything else?
Letter C. Then letter N.
Okay. And I'm going to ask that we vote on O separately. With that, I'm going to ask for a motion to approve items A, B, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, and P.
I second.
Motion by Mr. McBride, second by Ms. Gonzalez. Any comments or questions on the motion? Roll call vote, please.
Mr. Riddle,
Yes.
Ms. Callahan Wozniak,
Yes.
Mr. McBride,
Yes.
Ms. Gonzalez,
Yes.
Ms. Hannah,
Yes.
Ms. Leguizamo,
Yes.
President Ewing.
Yes, and I'm going to read those into the record. 8A, approval of the purchase of 66 passenger yellow school buses and 2 white activity buses. B, summer school supplemental materials newcomer program. D, Oakdale Elementary professional development request. E, Admentum Apex renewal for 2022-2023 school year. F, school climate conference. G, Nelson Campos Aspiring Superintendent's Academy. H, purchase of 1,400 Apple TV and security mounts. I, purchase of additional Chromebooks. J, E-rate 2022-2023 network projects, core switches, cable, and ATT. Cogent ISP, K, Cogent ISP upgrade. L, attendance at the National School Board Association NSBA 2022 Annual Conference Exposition. MDL Coordinator Bridget Dawson, attendance at 2022 National School Social Work Conference, Chicago, Illinois, 4/6 to 4/9. And P, approval of the second shipment of white paper for fiscal year 22. We're now back up at item C, is professional development request for Amanda Patty. Recommended action, Superintendent.
It is the recommendation of the administration that the Board of Education authorize the professional development request for Miss Amanda Patty to attend the National Principal Supervisor Academy not to exceed $8,000.
Mr. Riddle, I so move that we approve this motion as read by the superintendent.
Motion by Mr. Riddle,
Second.
second by Ms. Wozniak. Any comments or questions on the motion?
Yes, I'd like to make a comment. As we sat here today and listened at public comment, everyone talked about the high school and the issues that we have going on over there. And Amanda Patty is the supervisor of the principal, and if there's issues with the principal, then there has to be accountability for that supervisor. And I don't think that we should be rewarding an administrator for going on going to the National Principal Academy, and the accountability and supervision of a direct employee is not working.
Go ahead, Mr. Riddle.
Yeah, I'd make a comment that I believe that in all means we should be sending one of our administrators who has a very difficult job and give her the opportunity to go to an academy, which is she had to be accepted to that academy. There's a limited number of openings. It is over 3 different dates, 3 different times during the year: July, November, and April. This, to me, is a learning opportunity that we would not want to be hold back from an administrator who has a very difficult job to do. So I think we should approve this.
Ms. Wozniak.
And the second point in the presentation is that this academy will provide professional learning about best practices for assessing, gathering, and using evidence to support and monitor principals' progress. And that's exactly what you're calling for, and that's what you'll be trained to do at this. Yes.
But the thing is, she's been a supervisor for how many years? How many years? And that training should have taken place and/or
And we
The
get training,
should have been before she became the supervisor of
and we can
the high
always get
school principal.
retrained and
Yeah, as a board that
Best
says they
practices.
support PD and professional development, it would
Yes, I
seem, I don't see why
But
we
it's
would not
after the
support it.
fact, though.
Again, so I would like to, we have a motion and a second.
The only other thing I would like to add is that not only does Miss Patty supervise that school, the high school, but she also supervises middle school and elementary school. So, I mean, she's got a job that encompasses, it affects many of our schools. So she's been in that position a short while. I think that certainly all of our teachers and staff need professional development if they're going to improve.
She's been there 5 years.
Yes.
5 years, and you would think that the training would have happened beforehand,
Yeah, because
not after the fact. And
we have a motion and a second.
we're
roll call
talking,
vote,
we're
please.
discussing it.
But we're all trained, even we as board members. Some of us
Absolutely
who have
we
been
are.
on the board for many years still go to training yearly.
That's right. And you know the difference? The difference is that they have a 9 to 5. 9 to 5 job to do. And how can you become a supervisor of principals when you've never served as a principal?
The research says you do not need to be a principal to be a supervisor of principals.
Yeah, and I'm gonna ask, like I say, I appreciate everybody's passion, but again, it's not a back and forth dialogue at this point. We have the opportunity for public comment, which has ended.
I was gonna go ahead and say something. I appreciate all the comments that people are making. I think I hear what people are saying about expecting our administrators to stay at home and to provide solutions for the people that they're working with in our buildings to best serve our students. But the thing is that sometimes they're looking at the people around them and they don't got the answers, so they got to go elsewhere. And I'd rather have them be learning from the best, where they're supposed to be learning, right? Because that's what we're doing. We're learning and hoping our students in our schools are learning. And this is what we have to do. Zoom can teach her? I thought we didn't want Zoom. That's why we have our kids back in the classes, despite this pandemic going on. I don't want to be going back and forth either.
Yeah, I'm gonna encourage the board again. Public comment has ended. Yeah.
I'm just finding out just moving back to Waukegan. If there was a loss of life because of her dereliction of duty, would you still be sending her to training, or would she be fired?
So again, we're not having a back and forth with the audience. The opportunity and time for public comment has ended.
Board President, I call for a vote.
Yes.
We got a motion. We have a second. We have a call. Roll call vote, please.
Mr. Riddle,
Yes.
Ms. Callahan Wozniak,
Yes.
Mr. McBride,
Yes.
Ms. Gonzalez,
Yes.
Ms. Hannah,
No.
Ms. Leguizamo,
Yes.
President Ewing.
Yes, item approved, motion carries. 8N, additional language liaison for the speech and language department.
It is a recommendation of the administration that the Board of Education authorize the superintendent the approval of additional language liaisons for speech and language department estimated at $27,000 per year prorated for school year '22.
Mr. Riddle, I so move that we accept and approve the motion as read by the superintendent.
Second.
Motion by Ms. Riddle, second I heard first was for Ms. Leguizamo. Any comments or questions on the motion?
Yes, I would like to know if we know whether the individual that is receiving this this contract, if they are the actual owners of this company where we get the speech and language individuals from. And I don't know if that has been looked into at all, but I think that it needs to be looked into, and I'm asking for it to be pulled off of the agenda until we can get some more information regarding this item here.
So, Ms. Hannah, I don't believe there is somebody that is in mind for this one. Have you heard of that one? Because
it is.
This would be for the position itself.
Right, the people that are being placed in the positions,
right,
are from the company that a district employee owns. And I think we need to look into it and get the accurate information before we vote on this.
So we don't have a person, the person cannot apply for the position if this position is not approved or reviewed, right? So I just want to make sure.
And I
right?
apologize.
Is that how that goes? I mean, that's what we're.
For the sake of time,
Yeah.
and because we're talking about a week and we have a special meeting next week, we will go and verify the information. Again, we have a board protocol, which would, we can avoid this, is if we have questions and concerns, we can bring those up prior to the meeting, so that way it doesn't delay the business of the board. But I will honor that request from Ms. Hannah, and we will bring it back at our next, either if we do move forward with a special meeting, if we have other items that need to be cleared up, or at our meeting on April 12th. So, again, not an issue. So would you withdraw your first and your second?
Yes.
Thank you. All right, we'll hold that item over. We are now at item O, approval to hire 4 additional safety officers at Waukegan High School's Washington campus.
It is the recommendation that the Board of Education authorize the superintendent to hire 4 additional safety officers for Waukegan High School, Washington campus. The approximate salary for FTE is $37,457.05, or $149,828, which includes salary and benefits.
Mr. Riddle, I so move that we approve this motion as read by the superintendent.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Riddle, second by Ms. Leguizamo. Any comments or questions on the motion?
Yes.
Go ahead, Ms. Leguizamo.
I have a comment, but I also have a question of clarification. It was asked for us to see if we can move up the hire date here. I don't see that information here. I just wanted to clarify. Are we moving up the hire date, or is this still for the following school year?
Once the board approves, it will be advertised.
Great, that's great to hear. So appreciate the clarification. The other comment, and I made mention to this when we were in the committee meeting, I just want to make sure that once again, as we're looking at our safety assessments, that we're not just looking at what's going on inside the school buildings, but also threats that can occur from outside the school buildings, right? So I want to make sure that when we're getting our safety officers, that we're looking from that standpoint as well, because it's not just about what's going on in the inside, it's also about what kind of threats that can happen to our students from outside factors. So I appreciate the comments on that.
Yes.
Thank you, Board President.
Thank you, Mrs. Leguizamo. As I have committed to the board president, we will be doing a safety assessment, a full safety assessment. I am in setting a meeting with someone to discuss what that would look like for Waukegan Public Schools, to look within our not only our high schools, but district-wide.
Ms. Gonzalez?
I just wanted to make a comment about, and Ms. Leguizamo had kind of touched on it last meeting when we were learning about this. I think that this is a Band-Aid solution to what we're experiencing in the schools, and it's really hard for me to invest these kind of dollars when I would prefer having more paraprofessionals, more teachers, higher wages for the people who are trying to keep the students in the classroom. But I understand that there are a lot of community members and a lot of families who send their kids and are very scared to send their kids to our schools. I don't think that policing is the way to go. That's just my personal opinion, and I've been transparent about that since I ran. So my comment would be that if we're gonna get these 4 people, I don't care if they're coaches, I don't care if they're mentors, I don't care what kind of training that they receive, but that they create some sort of boundary for what that position is going to look like, and to work within that department or in that team to start changing the role of safety officers because they do build relationships closest with the students. But regular hall sweeps, I don't know if that's going to do the decreasing that we want. Are they trained for the emergency situations that we've seen? Because I've heard a lot of negative situations or interactions that they've had with students. So I'm just cautious about this one. I support it because I believe we need more staff, but I need to see the follow through with this and what it looks like.
So, yeah, one of the reasons I asked to vote on this separately is because it was a conversation. We were talking about bringing them on July 1. We did recommend that they be brought in earlier. I'm glad of that. There was a lot of conversation about why Washington and not Brookside, and so we were told that there was an assessment done, right, and it was determined that that is where the staff was needed. What I've heard and what I've seen through videos and even with my own in the building is on paper we may have enough staff, but with call-offs and other things, we want to make sure that the people who are at those buildings are not overburdened. So again, I will support this. I will vote for it, but I do expect for us to have a more comprehensive plan, and I do think you have to do both. You have to protect the students, but you also have to be proactive and provide those additional supports and resources. And so while I support this, I also want us to be proactive with the supports and resources. And so I do think our safety staff are on the front lines, and they are doing a really good job as best they can, but we need to make sure that we're supporting them. We need to make sure that we're training them. We need to make sure, and I see one of my security guards who's sitting over there, many of them who are still with the district and have been here 15, 20 years. We need to listen to their experience, their expertise, and make sure that they're included in the decision-making process. So I will support these 4 positions, and I do hope that we will have a recommendation very soon for wherever we need additional staff or support as it relates to our safety department, is because our #1 responsibility is to keep the students that attend District 60 safe. So thank you for bringing up the timeline with the board concurrence, and we look forward to an update for us in the community as far as what we're doing around increased and enhanced safety procedures.
I got one question, one comment.
Go ahead, Ms. Hannah.
Along with all of the assessments and so forth, I certainly hope that we find it in our justification and assessment that our safety officers' salaries are brought up, and maybe we can attract more safety officers. We can retain them, and we can celebrate that they are valuable in our district.
Thank you for that, Ms. Hannah. All right, we got a motion and a second. Roll call vote, please.
Mr. Riddle?
Yes.
Ms. Callahan Wozniak?
Yes.
Mr. McBride?
Yes.
Ms. Gonzalez?
Yes.
Ms. Hannah?
Yes.
Ms. Leguizamo?
Yes.
President Ewing?
Yes. Item approved, motion carries. We are now at item 9A, approval to report and pay unclaimed wages and other approved payments to the Illinois State Treasurer's Office.
It is the recommendation of the superintendent that the Board of Education authorize the district treasurer to forward the value of all outstanding checks that have remained uncashed for 3 years or more to the Illinois State Treasurer Office in accordance with the revised Uniform Unclaimed Property Act 765 ILCS 1026 Section 15-401.
I make a motion that we approve this item as presented.
Motion by Ms. Hannah, second by Mr. McBride. Any comments or questions on the motion?
Yes.
Go ahead, Ms. Leguizamo.
I don't know if the department, oh, hi, Ms. Pope, thank you for being here this evening, as always. I do have a point of a clarification question. I'd just like to know if you know what the value of this would be.
Board President, board members, superintendent, and community. Currently, it's about a little over $200,000 at present.
Oh my
Thank you,
God.
Ms. Pope.
That's all.
It's more than I thought.
That's it. We work very hard to try and clear those up.
Those were all my questions. Board President?
Mr. Riddle?
Ms. Polk, before you leave, could you just give us an idea what some of those unclaimed checks are for? I'm surprised the amount is that high.
Well, it's accounts payable checks, and it's also payroll checks.
Okay.
And it's over a number of years
Okay.
that we've accumulated that.
It's every 3 years we have to do this? Yes.
Well, if they're 3 years or older.
Or older? Okay.
Yes, we
Okay.
have to forward the money to the state treasurer's office.
I got you. Okay.
And people can still get them.
Right, they can still.
Yes.
There's a program, if those people want their paycheck, to go on that website and claim them, because that's a lot of money.
That is correct.
Right.
We have to forward a file to the state, and then they'll be able to claim their money once we forward the money to the state.
Yeah.
Right.
Thank you, Ms. Polk.
Okay.
Do that every year.
Yep.
Roll call vote.
Mr. Riddle?
Yes.
Ms. Callahan Wozniak?
Yes.
Mr. McBride?
Yes.
Ms. Gonzalez?
Yes.
Ms. Hannah?
Yes.
Ms. Leguizamo?
Yes.
President Ewing?
Yes. Item approved, motion carries. We are now at item 10A, personnel for 32122.
It is recommended that the Board of Education accept the administration's recommendations to approve the appointment and accept the resignations as found on schedules F975 and L922.
Mr. Riddle, I so move. We approve the motion as recommended by the superintendent.
Motion by Mr. Riddle,
Second.
second by Ms. Wozniak. Any comments or questions on the motion?
Yes, I have a comment. I will not be supporting this because there are a number of resignations on this list of educators, and at this point in our school district and at our time, we can't afford to lose any educators, and we don't have enough educators, we don't have enough substitute teachers, and so if we are losing educators, then we're just going to become more deficit in the classrooms with the students. So I can't support this.
Any other comments or questions? Roll call vote, please.
Mr. Riddle?
Yes.
Ms. Callahan Wozniak?
Yes.
Mr. McBride?
Yes.
Ms. Gonzalez?
Yes.
Ms. Hannah?
No.
Ms. Leguizamo?
Yes.
President Ewing?
Yes. Item approved, motion carries. We are now at 10B, other personnel action items for non-renewal.
It is recommended that the Board of Education accept and approve the administration's recommendation to implement a non-renewal of probationary teachers.
Mr. Riddle, I so move that we approve the motion as recommended by the superintendent.
Motion by Mr. Riddle,
Second.
second by Ms. Wozniak. Any comments or questions on the motion?
This is ditto.
Ms. Gonzalez?
Oh, did Miss Hannah want to say something?
She said it was ditto, so.
I just wanted to clarify because some community members didn't think it was about teachers, and it is about teachers. So just to be very clear that the item is what it is.
Any other comments or questions on the motion? Roll call vote, please.
Mr. Riddle?
Yes.
Ms. Callahan Wozniak?
Yes.
Mr. McBride?
Yes.
Ms. Gonzalez?
Yes.
Ms. Hannah?
No.
Ms. Leguizamo?
Respectfully, yes.
President Ewing?
Yes. Item approved, motion carries. We are now at information items, and there is a presentation. These are first readings of policies. So for the community and those who may be participating, when people say, how do we get involved with policy, there are committees. These are committee recommendations that have come forward to the Board of Education. And if you want to review what is being suggested, you can click on those and make recommendations, and we give the opportunity for at least 2 readings. So this is the first reading. So the first reading allows the board to review and the community to review, and if they want suggestions or have suggestions, points of clarification, they can ask those before it comes back for a second reading. If we can get the presentation on the screens. Yep. One attached, I thought. So we're not ready to go with that?
It seems like they got them up.
Yeah.
I think because some people are on spring break and wanted to be here on vacation. That's why Kathy, I think, is more concerned. Right? That's what the issue was. So I know Jennifer wanted to be here and Lisa wanted to be here.
So we won't be bringing this up to April because, I mean, it was a attachment. So I didn't know if they want to speak to it.
Will that work for you, or do you want me to go?
This budget, high level. So again, it is spring break and this was a special meeting. So the conversation that you saw happen is just us. We have some people who are in district, some who could not be here. This is a first reading, which means no action is being taken tonight. I did have questions, so Mr. Berry, just high level if you want to hit those, and then community members, it's there as an attachment. So if you guys have questions about the policies, it gives you the opportunity to ask those questions before we come back and approve these at a later meeting.
Mr. Berry and Ms. Fields, we're going to say very high level because I do know that Ms. Ambrosio and Ms. Rice Dela Sanchez would have liked to have been with us, but they are on vacation. So just an umbrella.
Yes. As our committee, several have been on there and not able to be here tonight, but I was just here to take the questions. This is for our curriculum policy. There are several members that were on there from board, from every level, parent, building admin. We were all there. We also, Mrs. Fields has been supporting us, and we've been doing a legal review with Ms. Kathy as well. So this just gives us a quick overview of all the members. And then there is a process. We're utilizing the new equity tool to review the policy. Each member reviews the policy against the tool, and everyone is allowed to express their concerns, recommendation for changes, and then we all do a strike through, and everyone puts their input and voice to the policy. And so these are on your first read here is just what we have brought forth as some changes that we would recommend for the policy for the board to review.
Thank you. Yeah, we keep my big one, and so the information that's there, and it's just a takeaway and say they got to know boards if something to think about or even to adjust for the presentation. I know that there was a lot of talk about credits, and so I'd be very interested on when this is presented in full, why the decision was made not to keep it with the state requirement, but to actually expand that for this upcoming year. So I am putting that out there because just like we heard from Dwayne Springs, is we know that our students have gone through a collective trauma, and we know that they have their challenges, right? And so if the state is saying this is what is needed in order to graduate, at the time when I graduated, it was 20 credits. I graduated with 26, right? By setting that standard, it doesn't mean that you can't exceed it. So I would like what the thought process was around equity when this is brought back forward. But good job on the tool, and there's a lot of helpful information there and from the community. So,
and just one clarification, I was working on the curriculum policy. I was not on the credit policy. So there are the graduation policy. So there are several different committees looking at each different one.
Ms. Leguizamo and then Ms. Wozniak.
Thank you, Mr. Berry, for the presentation here. But this is in regards to the curriculum policy here. And I noticed that we have the Common Core is as defined here, and that's usually the ELA and math part. We have college readiness standards, learning standards, Illinois computer science standards, WITA. If you guys can please define what that is in the policy.
Okay.
But what I'd like to also just hone in on, in regards to social studies and science, how is that implemented here in the definition of these core curriculums? Because those are the only ones that we're tackling here. So I just want to make sure, is that embedded in one of these?
Yes, because of the reading standard is in all math, science, social studies. So even though those particular courses may not be named, those same standards and content go throughout all of our core. And the WIDA is for our bilingual services, and so we can define that a little bit more for you.
And so the reading part of that, in the ELA part of the Common Core, that's where we're going to find the social studies and the science curriculum out of that.
Yes, if those same ELA standards are found in science and social studies as well.
Okay, thank you for clarification. Those are all my questions.
Ms. Wozniak?
I'm sorry, mine was for graduation.
So same.
No, it's the next policy.
This is all the same.
We're
for
doing
you.
all of them at the same time. Okay, so then I was reading the requirement for graduation, completing the free FAFSA or an application for state financial aid or submit a waiver of this requirement signed by the parent unless exempt. So every student that's going to graduate, all 1,000 or so of them, has to have a parent sign something and turn it in before they can graduate. And we did that last year.
Because I believe it's in policy at this moment, right?
So that is a requirement that the school code and our state legislature put in place. It went into effect last year, and I do believe they had the process in place last year.
Okay.
For those who were eligible to graduate.
And so some student would not graduate if their parents didn't turn in this paperwork?
They do. The exception allows for the principal, I believe it is, to override as long as they've established efforts to get the parent to either provide the waiver or
so how many
the documentation.
times is that happening?
I would have to get that data and bring that back.
I'd like that information.
Okay.
Because I know myself filling out the FAFSA is time consuming and troublesome, and it was not a pleasure to do. And so these other steps have to be more simplified, right? And easier, or no?
So I do think that's part of the initiative with this, is to have whether it's the counselors or other staff in the high school assisting with that process.
Okay.
Yeah, I have an issue.
Oh, go ahead, Ms. Anna.
Yeah, and I am concerned, very, very, very much concerned about the board resolution, student discipline procedure, mandatory expulsion recommendation. This is something unheard of, and I am just wondering, how are we talking about expelling students with IEPs, and and what I was reading, unless it was a mistake, that if the misconduct, when the student's IEP team has found that the student's misconduct to be a manifestation of a student's disability, and the director of diverse learners and superintendent, in consultation with legal counsel as necessary, concur with the IEP team's findings. Are you all saying that regardless of their IEP, that we're going to be expelling students with IEPs, and you're going to make it mandatory that our school district does that? Is that against the IDEA? And has anybody consulted
Can we let Kathy
with the
respond?
federal?
Because I think it'll answer your
Excuse me,
question.
can I finish?
But I know, Ms. Hannah.
Okay, but let me finish my statement, please, sir. That if we do this, and a parent files a complaint against this, we stand in jeopardy to lose funding for special education in our district. And so you guys need to make me understand what this is all about, because I've never heard of a mandatory expulsion for students with IEPs.
So this is not mandating expulsion for students with IEPs.
That's what it
This
says.
is bringing together and looking at the requirement under state law for mandatory expulsions.
Federal.
This is combining the state law requirement for mandatory expulsion referrals subject to modification by the superintendent or the board, that also has to align with, as you say, Mrs. Hannah, you're absolutely correct, with the idea that, and the state law also says discipline is to go into effect consistent with IDEA. What this would allow is when we have a mandatory expulsion referral that has to come forward and an MDR decision, what the federal law says is the decision maker is supposed to be advised of what the MDR decision is, and the board would be the decision maker. So rather than both of those things have to come forward when the manifestation is found to be related to the disability, this would authorize the superintendent to pull that expulsion recommendation consistent with the school code statement that a mandated weapons offense must come forward to the board for up to a minimum of 1 year unless modified by the superintendent and board. So it is an effort to streamline that process and not put both the district and the student through a hearing unless the parent asks for the hearing to establish that and challenge whether or not their child engaged in the misconduct. So it is not requiring expulsion by any means. It is allowing for the superintendent to say, there's been a finding it's related to the disability, so she is adjusting and pulling that expulsion recommendation rather than it going forward, and then she would report to the board that that had happened and the reason therefore, and the board would be authorizing her to do that because the board could also modify what the superintendent is doing. But we have preserved in this proposed resolution that if a parent still wants the hearing, because the parent wants to challenge whether their child engaged in the misconduct at all, they can have that hearing go forward.
Okay, and when you say misconduct, I see here that you said a weapon.
Yes.
A weapon is different than the misconduct. And I am going to play like Miss Cleo, and I'm going to say that once this gets done, that we're going to have students that are in with IEPs, and students are going to be brought forward and mandated to be expelled, and you all are going to take it out the hands of the administration, and you're going to put that jeopardy on the Board of Education. So this needs to be looked at, and I'm going to do my own digging. I'm going to call the federal, the Department of Education, and I'm going to ask about this. I'm going to find out about this because I've never heard this, and I've been sitting here 25 years. I've never heard it.
So, Kathy, for clarification, what we are being asked, right, is that if a student's actions would require them to be expelled, right? So the action that they're accused of.
It's not just any expulsion. It's only when the school code says that it is a mandatory expulsion referral.
And that's
so
weapons.
There's not, right, and that's in the first line.
The weapons is that's kind of a mute point.
So can I finish my statement? And so my statement was that if a weapons offense would require the student to be automatically brought up for expulsion, is what this is stating is that if the act, what they're accused of, is a result of their IEP, that the superintendent could recommend that the student not be expelled.
Correct.
So this would actually limit how students with disability are expelled.
Correct.
So
why
it would bring us in compliance with the federal law as well as the school code.
And so is there a reason why this came up in the first place? Have we had a student with the IEP that had a weapon? Or is this just something that kind of was brought down? Because I'm not understanding where this came from.
We are looking at a case
With a student with a weapon?
that would qualify.
A gun?
A weapon is not just limited to a firearm. It's also use knives,
Sharp objects.
Knives if you use another object that could seriously injure another individual. And
So one incident brought this forth. Okay, y'all can move on. I'm done.
I do have a question.
Go ahead, Ms. Leguizamo.
So I'd like to understand, why are we doing this through a resolution instead of updating a policy on this one?
Right.
because the MDR is to be brought before the decision maker under federal law, which is the board. So if we, and let me be clear, if the board doesn't want to do it this way, we can bring them all forward, and then both the parent and the administration will go through the hearing, even though we know it is related to the disability. You would go through the hearing, you would come forward to the board with a hearing has been held, and here's the outcome of the manifestation, but you would not be able to expel it that time because it was found to be related to the disability. So we are just trying to, we were trying to establish some efficiency in operation without having to put everybody through a hearing. So it's, it is up to the board whether you want to proceed this way. If the board prefers that these come before you, then that's how we'll proceed.
And again, and so this is saying that you, I thought this was a more affirming way to deal with the situation and with students, especially with IEPs and disabilities. Again, it will be up to the board. But, and so that was the thing. It wasn't to say that if a student has an IEP, you can automatically expel them. So
It's going, but this is going to encompass more students than just students with weapons.
but it's clear in the resolution. So again, I would encourage you to do your own research and let an attorney look at it. But as I read it, again, I don't want that to be what's put out there, is that the intent is to expel kids. It's actually to give the superintendent the authorization to say, hey, this kid shouldn't be expelled because it's a manifestation of their IEP. It's not giving them more power to expel without the board. It's actually taking it so that we can say that it's about it. So again,
We gotta read it. We gotta read it.
I did.
And maybe the
We all should have before this.
Maybe the language need to be changed or something.
let's make some recommendations. So yeah, if we want to change language,
Maybe the language, because it says mandatory expulsion recommendation.
yeah, so I think if you want to reach out to Ms. Hannah when she has some time, if there's some better language that we like to use, we can incorporate that. Or the board can look at the question on if they would like to actually have this, what is it? Resolution anyhow. So with that, if I can get the screen back up.
Yeah, I'd like it to be.
We have item 11E, so information item, which was added late.
Was there an attachment to that?
Yeah,
No.
can we go back to the graduation? I feel like we skipped that, and Miss Fields and Mr. Barry are just like sitting there. Or like,
I think they were waiting because they don't want to, right? They didn't want to present on it because everybody wasn't here.
But I just
so
want to
they
say
provided-
thank you for your time and all of our stakeholders that participate in the work groups in this process. It does include parents, community members, and our staff here. It's been a very positive process, and it's continuing. So we look forward to coming back with more updates on those policies, and we will take the feedback back to our chairs.
Yeah, and can I just say one thing about the graduation, because I know it came up and we kind of went back and forth. What I want the board to consider is that the raw number, and Ms. Vanderbroek could probably correct me, the raw number seems high, and it will be higher given the new state requirements that are coming in for the incoming years. But the way that students are completing a course, that definition is slightly changing depending on the course, and I think that that helps the situation. So I think there's tweaks that we can definitely do, and I know that if Ms. De Los Sanchez was here, she would explain some of the things that the committee struggled with. But at the end of the day, if we want more students to graduate, I feel like being flexible with the requirement is something that we have to look at. So keep that in mind for when it comes around the next time.
Thank you.
Question in this policy, as we're talking specifically about policy 5301, and that's the graduation requirements. So in the presentation, you provided some statistics, right? And my concern for a while has been physical education. So did your assessment also determine that most of the students do not pass because of dress grading systems versus participation? Because I know I mentioned a while ago I'd like for us to give grades based off of participation versus dress code, and I'd like for them to change, but there are some instances where our students won't change, but I think that's to their discretion. So just like to understand where that data came from.
Yes, so in the tool, it does ask for you to pull, if there are data that you need to pull in order to make these decisions, and so that did come up, right? We need to really look at who does this impact, who's failing, typically PE. And that conversation did come up with what does that look like. And there are some practices that is recommended by the work group that we really need to look at that and take some action around what that looks like and what determines a student's grade moving forward. So there was definitely some conversation around that.
And has that conversation included anything? Was it the reason why they're not dressing is because they didn't want to, or because they didn't have the financial means or access for a gym uniform?
I don't want to misspeak, but there were a lot of reasons given.
Okay. Because, this also kind of, I started having conversations with other board members across the nation about PE and what that looks like. And I've heard from other school districts that what they have done was actually provide at least one school uniform for free for every student, since it is a requirement for their coursework. So I definitely like to at least put that conversation in this committee to have that as what that looks like financially and so on and so forth. This is for our middle school to high school. I don't know how the board feels about that, but I definitely think that when it comes to PE, that has been, I don't understand why we have a lot of our students that don't meet the requirements, they're not passing it, and if it is because of dress, and it is a requirement to pass, I'd like for us to remove some of that barrier and provide at least one dress uniform for our students.
As a PE teacher, I can tell you that it's not just dress code that gets in there. We have a lot of students that choose not to.
And I'm sorry. I would love to, but when I do for one, I have to do for all, Ms. Hannah. That's it. I'm not being rude. I'm not trying to silence the teacher. But if I let her do it, don't let somebody else again. So go ahead, Ms. Hannah.
Could you tell me, explain freshman seminar?
Yeah, I think Ms. Hannah.
Maybe Mr. Berry or somebody.
We'll take that question and we'll come back. The committee leads are going to come back.
We do have some
for
some work group
seminar.
members that are.
Yeah.
Freshman students at the 9th grade level, that is helping them with the curriculum adapted to high school, and they do executive functioning skills, study skills, as well as some career interest.
Thank you. And I do appreciate that.
Thank you very much.
But we can have, I think, an actual presentation on what happens in freshman seminar.
Can I say something real? I think we had some teachers that sat on the committees and counselors. I believe they're here. I just want to acknowledge your presence today. Thank you. Thank you for coming today. Because people were on spring break, we're not ready to dive deep in this, but we will be inviting you back for the first board meeting in April where the committee leads will be here along with the board members that have sat on this committee, and we will take a deep dive and we will answer those questions on freshman seminars. So we look forward for you coming back. And the gym uniform, all of that. Today, this is just a high overview. It's a first reading. And when policies are presented to the board, they go through a number of readings. This is the first time the board is actually seeing these policies in whole. So we want them to be able to read through them, digest them, do some research and come back, because ultimately it'll be their decision on what goes into the policy. We are only making, the committees are only making recommendations. So thank you, Ms. Fields, and thank you, Mr. Berry.
And if I could just add, you know, one of the things, this is the first time we're coming forward with any of the equity policy reviews.
Yeah.
And we brought it forward in the same way that we have brought forward other policy reviews, which is to just present them for information the first time and your opportunity to review it and then taking questions the second time around. The whole part of having some priority policies was to see how this pilot goes and whether we need to approach these when we are presenting them in a different way. And what I'm taking from today is maybe going forward when we're doing equity reviews on policies, do them as a presentation to the board at first reading instead of holding that for second reading. Am I reading the board correctly on this?
100%.
Yes.
Yes? Okay, thank you for that. We'll shift our practice on that input. Thank you.
And next up is item 11E.
At this time, I'd like to call up Deputy Moulton.
Good evening, members of the board, superintendent, staff, and community. Item 11E is the Director of Logistics and Compliance position. This is something in communication with the superintendent I have requested for some time to provide additional assistance within the operations division. We don't have anything attached on the board agenda this evening, but I did want to give a presentation and an overview of why this position is needed. So in collaboration in both divisions, and this is between operations, academics, as well as legal, we've identified several areas of need. Now these areas of need, they are not new needs, they're old needs. They're needs that need to be reviewed on a regular basis. A lot of these needs have fallen within the operations division, ultimately my office, as well as my direct reports. But we want to take a more intentional focus on some of these items. I want to mention those items to you this evening. They're items that have been brought forward to the board in the past, as well as what we've heard from parents and staff at the school level. Asset management and asset inventory. That's something that we need assistance with a more direct focus. Currently, we identify our assets at anything valued over $5,000, but the board has approved several items below the $5,000 mark that we want to make sure that we're keeping track of, specifically Chromebooks as well as furniture and other mechanical equipment that may be underneath that value. Now we do have a insurance position in the HR department, but we need to get on a tighter cycle for property valuations for insurance purposes. So this person would help be the liaison between the insurance agent as well as our insurance, our HR department. Material distribution. This is also another major item. Every year we come to you purchasing materials for our students and our staff. We do have a warehouse procedure where the purchasing department purchases the items. They make it to the warehouse. But once it goes from the warehouse to the buildings, we need systems and structures in place to make sure we keep tabs on those items. Okay? And I'm not saying that this is perfect now, but this is certainly something we want to get better at to ensure that we're not buying the same materials every year if we know that we should have them on inventory within our buildings. And that particular item results in expenditures of millions of dollars for our students. Another item is the risk management plan that was recently approved by the Board of Education. We discussed internally a lot, doing this by committee, ensuring that that risk management plan gets followed, even though it falls under the operations division. This person would be able to directly manage that process, make sure that the reports are provided at the school level, the audits are done either by themselves or by a third party, and make sure that we're doing that on an annual basis so we are always current with the ADA codes. Training of staff from an operations standpoint, policy as well as procedures. Every year we have the legal conference. We also have principal meetings, assistant principal meetings. We have institute days. It's very important that the operations division step it up, I'd say, as far as staff training as well as parent information. So some of the policies that I'm referencing: transportation, wellness, facility use of vehicles, inventory control, as well as financial controls. Information is power. We want to make sure that those ongoing trainings are taking place, and this individual is making sure that the staff have the resources they need to comply with these. Recently, the Board of Education approved a procurement officer for the finance division. The procurement officer would work with the legal department as well as the business office for major purchases. This person, again, compliance and logistics of where those items go and when, and make sure that all the staff are on the same page so that there are no surprises. Logistics through transportation management, and not the transportation department, but specifically arrival and dismissal, recommendation and reviews, and being the liaison with either our consultants or local law enforcement, the traffic division, because that is something that every year either staff members or parents bring to our attention or challenges. Not at every school, but at several of our schools. Whenever we do a paving project or we relocate a main entrance, a student entrance, a staff entrance, etc., this is something that is a major concern. So as opposed to this responsibility being spread out, we want to put this on one person's plate to manage it, provide recommendations, and do regular, ongoing, annual analysis of this item. Another thing is...
You can continue and then answer questions at the end, Mr. Deputy Moore.
Yeah, just a few more, Ms. Hannah. Thank you. Along the lines of risk management, ADA compliance, signage. So we've done a lot of exterior signage throughout the schools, but I want the board to know right now that this year when we went through and we did our walkthroughs, we identified several areas of a need for better consistency as well as ADA accountability as it relates to signage throughout the schools. A lot of those you might see in the new additions at some of the schools, but we need to step up our game at all the schools throughout the district. And again, as classroom changes, functions of room changes, as well as offices, we need to keep that current. This person would also assist in all matters pertaining to budget management of supplies and materials, again going to the inventory control piece, special projects, and being that point person with the community and staff whenever there are updates. Now lastly, I will say this, because a lot of these items are things we're reviewing multiple times a year or once a year, is that we need a point person in operations that can consistently work with our governmental agencies, the park district, local law enforcement in certain instances, the Waukegan Library, the Regional Office of Education, through coordination with HR as well as the operations department, because there's a lot of records there and a lot of things that need to be coordinated on a regular basis. A lot of times with the various district priorities we have and people scheduling availability, it's difficult at times to meet those expectations, but it's also important that the district have one face and one voice with those different agencies to discuss some of these items instead of directing them to multiple people. So this would establish a level of consistency with that as our governmental agency communication has expanded, particularly while we're working with our ESSER funds and COVID-related items. Ms. Hannah?
Yes, okay. You named all of those, director of logistics and all of that stuff. Is this a duplication of services? Let me tell you why I'm asking that. He talked about purchasing, right? We have someone dealing with that already. Is that person gonna be moved out of that job and she's gonna lose her job? Wait, then you can answer it all together. And we have our inventory. We had put in a system before where the warehouse was doing our inventory, where they were look, yeah, all right, come on, Techie. You know how they, the barcodes. They did the barcodes, Okay, they were doing all that with all of our equipment. Yeah, they were doing all that already. Okay, and so are those people going to be out of their jobs? Because, or is that a duplication of services? Wait a minute. And then we also, I haven't heard you say anything regarding our insurance, and because the person that did that is no longer with us, and so who is now handling insurance, seeing how the district is self-insured? Okay, so who now, does all of that come up under this? And are the people going to be losing jobs for this one position, and then it becomes an overburden for this one person, and nothing gets done?
Thank you for the questions, Ms. Hannah. So I'll do my best to take them in order. So first, let me start by saying nobody's going to be losing their positions for this. For purchasing, so we do have a purchasing manager that addresses the purchases through iVisions, as well as working with the various departments. Our warehouse, and I'll tie this into the inventory piece, our warehouse does collect materials per a distribution list and delivered to the schools. Now, the one thing that we found that we need to grow in significantly is whether it's a barcoding system or some other system, it hasn't been in existence in a long time. And I've discussed that with the academics team several times. So when we come to you for curriculum materials, for example, 10th grade English, we do an annual requisition. We order the materials. It goes to the warehouse. The warehouse says this many goes, well, all the 10th graders are at Brookside campus, but they send it to Brookside campus. When we review the inventory levels for that particular item the following year, we've experienced challenges with tracking what went there, where it went once it got to the building. And that could be said throughout the whole district. Again, I'm not wanting to speak negatively of our practices, but we are investing a lot in these materials. We want to be as responsible as possible. It's important that when these items get to the buildings, we know where they're going, down to the office location, the classroom, so that when we come back to the board the following year, we're not repeating the same order or anything close to it. We're coming back specifically with just the items we need for that particular item.
Right, and let me dive deep. Okay, the televisions, all of the equipment, like our computers, all of that stuff. That's what I thought you were talking about. Okay, because we have to keep inventory of all of those things as well, and hopefully everything is insured. Okay, and so I thought that was what you were talking about in terms of the teaching and learning department. That would be something different. And so are you talking about combining all of that together? I don't understand that.
So, yeah, what I'm talking about is having one person responsible for what happens with the inventory once it gets to the building. Those other items you mentioned would be included as well, but we're not, as a district, currently consistent with that practice, and we want to get better. We are buying more than monitors and Chromebooks. We're buying a lot of items we come forward to the board with on a regular basis, so it would be for all those items.
Right, like the
Standard
televisions
supplies,
and all that stuff over in the high school and the lunch rooms where we have the televisions that are being used right now, but they're over there, and those are the things. And those 1,400 TVs that we just approved to be purchased, where are those TVs and stuff going?
Yeah, those as well. So those I don't believe those have been purchased yet, but those would be included as part of this record keeping. So you can you can say TV 100 is in room 220, and then every year if there need to be modifications or changes. Sometimes year to year we change our classroom and office assignments, so it would be important to make sure we have a single procedure in person checking that.
And so, okay, and then last question, you guys, I'm have to ask again so it doesn't get lost. The insurance individual that worked with the staff and insurance, have we replaced that person? And is our insurance aspect in the district okay right now, particularly for our staff, because that's who insurance is for? And do we have everything A-okay for that? So let me put it another way. If a staff had issues with insurance, who would they go to right now?
Yeah, so currently they would go to Maricela Jimenez, who's filling that responsibility.
Okay.
That position and vacancy is out there. It's posted. Mr. Figueroa is going through the hiring process and posting and evaluating the need there, because that is a position that sees a lot of staff requests and items specific to the time of year. However, the risk management portion was something that was going to go into the insurance area, but there's a lot of overlay between that and operations, because they're walking the grounds, they're looking at facilities, they're writing reports. If we want to do it in earnest and provide those recommendations so that we can reduce our risk and exposure in the district, that was something that was going to be done by committee when it was originally presented by Ms. Jones. But again, if we have 10 people looking at those items at 10 different places, we can train them and give them the forms and tools to do it, but we might get some difference of opinion and variation, so this person would be responsible for that.
And we still have our EAP program.
Yes, ma'am.
For our staff.
Yes, we do.
Okay.
Thank you for the questions.
Yes.
Mr. Riddle?
Yes, I would just like to ask if, Mr. Moten, if something, from what I'm understanding, you're asking is this is a position that you feel you need and you felt like you've needed it for a long time. I wonder if we could get a presentation at operations in our committee meeting instead of at a board meeting like this. Is this already approved by the superintendent? Is she recommending this, or are you asking the board's input? It seems rather hard for me to digest. I'd like to see a scale of what this person's duties are, job description, before because right now we can ask a ton of questions. We don't understand the position. It doesn't seem like something we could talk all night about it. I'd rather see a presentation, if possible, at a student achievement meeting so we could see where this person fits in the operational, scheme of things and why it's needed, rather than us discussing it tonight without any actual presentation, on a schematic of where they fit in and why it's needed and all that sort of stuff. I wonder if that's possible instead of...
Mr. Riddle, we can get that to the board. Please know that this is also a reclassification of a position that Mr. Moulton has had in his division that he feels that he could utilize other ways. So these monies are already allocated, we just don't utilize them, and he'd like to start utilizing them, especially with everything that he has going on.
there it is right there, the outline. I just wanted to see...
And we will send the organizational chart along with the job description to the board tomorrow.
Okay. That gives us a chance to delve into it and see how it actually fits in and where
So this is not a new position. This is a position he has sitting that he has not used, but we do not want that same title and same type of work. He wants to change it for something else.
And where is it shown on this chart that we're looking at here?
Oh, all the way over to the left.
It's on the far left, Mr. Riddle.
Director of Logistics, yeah.
Mr. White, can you zoom in a little bit, please?
Right, but
I don't understand how...
that doesn't tell me what they're doing.
Yeah, no, we'll get the job description along with
I
it.
don't
We'll send it
understand
off.
how we got on the organizational chart. We have why we don't, you all are not, the district leadership team does not include our associate superintendent of business and finance services. I don't understand how she's not in the, no, I see that, but she's not on the leadership team. And that's what, I don't understand that.
So if I could comment on what Mr. White has pulled up on the screen. So the individuals in green are on the district leadership team. The individuals in yellow, mustard color, are on the cabinet. So Miss Polk
Okay, the
is on
cabinet.
yes.
Okay.
Yeah, so everybody in yellow is on the cabinet, and then
Okay.
the green and the yellow are the district leadership team.
I,
Go ahead, Ms.
one last question, just because
Leguizamo.
this is really the only thing I have a question about. Would this person be the liaison for buildings when it comes to distributing materials? Because I know, going back to earlier in the year when like supply chain is always going to be supply chain and it's going to be, what it is. But is that person going to, coordinate communication and say, hey, this is what we got. This is, this is what's coming your way for each building? Or do you not see that being part of that function of this person?
So thank you for the question. So this person would support the distribution, but more specifically, how to track the inventory once it gets to the building. So right now, and our level of spend has increased in general. We have federal grant funds, et cetera. But a lot of the investments that we're making right now, today, especially if it's with one-time use dollars, I want to prevent 2 years from now saying we cannot locate that inventory. So this is critically important, as well as the standard items we purchase on a regular basis. Once it gets to the building, the warehouse operation is great. Our purchasing function is great, but once it gets to the building, we need to ensure that we know where it is in the building, and at the end of the year when we do our end of year closeout, we know where it's going the next year, or that it's still where it's supposed to be, as opposed to missing, not there.
So what if it is missing?
Well,
will our staff be fined, or will that add to the fees?
So we want to be as proactive about this as possible. This is where the training and the regular check and balance come into place. We also talk about the principals having a lot on their plates. This person could kind of help navigate that as well. So our principals may be asked to, you're getting the shipment in the summer. In May, when you do your end of year closeout, make sure the inventory is as it was distributed per building or per room. But this person would go each quarter, do the regular checks, make sure it's where it's supposed to be, so that at the end of the year we don't have any emergencies and we can stay ahead of the game. That would be the goal.
Okay.
Ms. Wozniak? And then,
Well, I was just thinking about these, like Apple TVs. You said they look like about this size. Those would easily walk away, and somebody would easily think that was a phone maybe and walk away with it. Is that strapped down, fixed somehow? What?
Yeah, Mr. Cesario is going to come up and speak. It's the size of a phone. It looks kind of like a modem, but
Okay, so it's not something that somebody's going to want to pick up and take away, but it will be mounted.
Good evening, Board President, Superintendent, board members, and members of the community. It is mounted. It's mounted to, usually it's mounted to the back of the TV. Okay. So it acts like a receiver. It is about the size of the phone. It's a little bit thicker, probably like your cable box now. How if you have a second one, it's attached to the back of the television.
Like I'm saying, it's all these little pieces can easily walk away.
It's connected to it's connected to the rear of the. In this case, it should be connected to the smart board or the TV, depending on what the teacher or the employee has in the room, whatever the role is. So like we have a lot of them in my office. Where there's one in my office, there's one in the superintendent's office, LeBaron's office, and they're behind the TV. You wouldn't even see them.
So, but there's not.
Are they inventoried? Yes, they're inventoried.
In all this inventory, there's not a tracker or anything on them, so that if they go out the building like
they don't
clothing,
start buzzing when you
they
walk
don't start
out.
buzzing at the door.
But it's on the TV, so hopefully it doesn't go away.
They are. I mean, you can't identify them. I mean, they each have serial numbers. Host Dr. Cuevas would get into whether or not you could track it. I don't want to misinform you, but I mean they are attached to the reader, or they're attached to the whatever unit is going to display.
Ms. Leguizamo?
Mr. Moulton, I have 3 questions for you as relates to this position. So can you just briefly explain what kind of education are you looking for them to have, the minimum amount of education? Because I'd like to understand, why is it that you're looking for a director level and not a coordinator level?
Or a manager.
Yeah. So the educational requirements would be bachelor's required, master's preferred, 5 years or more administrative experience in the school setting. Our inventory is somewhat unique. So we want to make sure they have the exposure within a school setting, an educational environment,
Why
as
would
well
it
as
be-
operations and logistics.
Yeah.
Because we,
So, no, yeah, I mean, into the second question in
Yeah,
regards to why a director versus a coordinator or a manager.
Sure.
Right?
So,
Go ahead.
yeah, absolutely. So we would be looking for this person to manage procedures, training, policy within the district, either recommending new policy or recommending changes to current policy, as well as being a liaison with governmental agencies. ISB regional office. Currently, I sit on not the board, but the planning committee for the Waukegan Park District. So organizations like that, we want to make sure that we have somebody of a level that can interface with those organizations, understand regulatory requirements, et cetera.
I mean, because you have other positions that are similar, right, but they are not to the director level.
That's right.
And so that's why I'd like to understand it a little bit more and really dive deep into that. I kind of have a little bit of a problem as this is our new position, right? And so we're going to go straight direct into a director role versus like a managerial and allow them to grow in this position, right? Because when you put somebody in there, you also need to make sure that they can grow, right?
Absolutely.
And so when you give them that director level, they're automatically kind of coming up at that high level. So what I'm looking for is also for growth. And if they meet those standards, I'd like to see them progress on. And that's, part of like our retention as well, right? So I just want to make sure that we're putting in the right people in the right place, right? But also starting them in the right place as well and making sure that they have that growth succession. So that's my take on that. That's my feedback.
and I'm going to piggyback off of Ms. Leguizamo with that. It is a little bit, we have people at manager level positions that have more education level than what this position is here. And they're just on a managerial level. And then we're gonna bring in, I can't wait to see what the salary's gonna be. And we're gonna bring in this person over someone that's already here. And I just don't think that that's good for morale.
I mean, the good thing is, they could apply, right? So if they're already in a managerial position, is that they could apply for this director role if that's within their realm, right? But, I still like to see that type of succession. That's my take on it. But I did want to ask one last and final question would this add an additional layer to the approval process for, let's say, asset management, right? Because I know that when it comes to our academics team that needs to purchase the materials they need to have like 2 to 3 levels. And so is this going to add that additional level?
Yeah, so we have multiple layers. If there's anything of a contractual nature, this person would be involved with that conversation as well as potential approval, but I don't want to diminish the authority of our principals or our area superintendents, bilingual department, etc. So if it's something contractual, yes. Specifically, it's something directly in their wheelhouse, such as risk management, yes. But we have multiple layers currently with approval of other items. This individual would make sure it gets to where it needs to go.
Okay.
Because they're not in the classroom every day.
And I think an ideal candidate would be somebody that has principal experience, somebody that, in thinking about this position and how it's more like I've seen it before, like a management support director that manages multiple things within the operations and academics and connects it so that there's coherency between the both. But we will get the
that was my
job
request.
description out to the board
A manager,
tomorrow.
Okay, a director position, and did I mishear about like a bachelor level? That's what you said, right?
A minimum.
Preferred.
A minimum bachelor level.
And then master's preferred with the minimum of minimum 5 years experienced, preferred as well.
Educational background.
So what I will ask then is for the job description and then a copy of that, what you just showed, the copy of the chain of command structure, and if that can be sent to the Board of Ed. And then if you have questions, once you receive that, direct those to the superintendent.
So, Mr. Ewing, if I could say one other thing, and again, I've had conversations with the superintendent about this in the past as well as my team. There's a lot going on right now. The district has upped the ante on a lot of priorities, a lot of initiatives. One of them was presented on before I came up here, the review process, which is ultimately going to involve every policy within this district, not just the priority ones. We've got additional funds for all initiatives. We're increasing our spend with ESSER. Like I said, we're aggressively tackling grants. We want to make sure that the assets stay in the district and we make improvements where needed. And quite honestly, my office has gotten swamped by a lot of these items, in addition to the regular items that we have to manage on a daily basis. Contractual negotiations with our unions. We've gone through a year and a half of ESSER initiative policy, implementation, purchases. This person could have certainly assisted with that at the time. We still have a lot of those initiatives ongoing, maybe not at the same height, but some of those items are going to maintain, they're going to be maintained as far as practices within our district. So I am asking to help distribute some of the work and get more effective in the areas I mentioned earlier, which are critical needs, that you all consider this position. And as the superintendent mentioned, this is a reclassified position that is currently vacant.
Okay, I got a couple questions.
Final questions, Ms. Hannah.
Okay, the first question is, in all of the logistics and compliance and all that stuff like that, where are we looking at spending money for solving some of the issues with the students over at the high schools? Now, we have spent just about $2 million on groups, okay, and I haven't seen any results, okay, and so where's the spending for the students? Okay, I get all the system stuff, okay, and we may need all that stuff, gotcha, okay, but we need to start focusing on our students and putting money where we can actually see results, where our students are getting better. Okay, and now let me finish. That's one question. My second question. Now, we're on spring break. Well, the students are on spring break, right? And we pay 12-month employees to be on their jobs for 12 months. Now, are we closed down during spring break where everybody is gone? Or are those 12-month employees at their workplaces? Now, and I also know that people can take vacation days, even though summertime was the normal time to take vacations. But I just want to know if our 12-month employees are at their workplace.
So to the first question, Deputy Moden, if we can come back and just provide a list to both the public and Ms. Hannah on where dollars are going and being spent directly into the schools, because I think when people see that number, it is significant. And so I think it's appropriate to ask the question. I think the community should know where these ESSER funds have been spent. And so I think that is valuable information for them to know. So the question, again, we're talking about one specific item, and you didn't come prepared to speak on where every dollar is being pushed into the classroom. But I would like to come back with that information for Ms. Hannah, the board, and the public at a future meeting. And you can respond to the final question, and then we're going to go, because we have to go into closed
I
session.
can respond. The district is not closed. 12-month employees can use benefit days. They can use them anytime they want to use. It's not just secluded to the summer. So if they want to take spring break and they put those days in, they actually even have more days because they were working during COVID and we allow them to roll over. So we are encouraging our staff to use their days before they run out, effective June 30th.
Thank you, Superintendent. With that, I would like a motion to go into closed session.
So moved.
Under exception C1. Motion
moved.
by Ms. Wozniak.
Second.
By Ms. Gonzalez. Roll call.
Mr. Riddle,
Yes.
Ms. Callahan Wozniak,
Yes.
Mr. McBride,
Yes.
Ms. Gonzalez,
Yes.
Ms. Hannah,
Yes.
Ms. Leguizamo,
Yes.
President Ewing.
Yes, we're in closed session, but if we can meet downstairs in 10 minutes.